Like I said, we've got these 3 songs that we're going to have a look at super casually. And what I'll do is I'll sort of throw you into them and then I'll just talk about them a little bit. And you can ask any questions in the comment section, and step by step, we'll have points where you can ask me those questions. And then we'll round up with more questions. And maybe if you want to play something of yourself, I think that would be really enjoyable. Yeah. I was really, really chuffed with the last little lesson I did for you guys a few weeks ago about establishing a practice routine. And I wanted to sort of kick off the lesson, just a quick 2 or 3 minute recap on that. How do I share my screen? This is where the fun begins. Preview, there we go. This was actually the notes from last time. That's not what I want. Hello. Oh, here we go. Well, I'm sure at any rate, no, we'll get there, hang on. One more time. If not, I'll just refer to it by proxy.
We could see it then, Sam.
Oh, that one, okay, let's try that. No, that's Blue Z, I want...
Oh, right, sorry, yeah, I thought you meant the screen, we can see the share. So.
It's okay, never mind. That's minorly frustrating, but you've got that document in front of you that says resources. Guess what's in there? That's me playing terribly. You can see a picture of the Swan, me playing the Swan, which is going to be the first song we're going to look at. There's a little bit about me there. I do free lessons on the chromatic and the diatonic, obviously on my super high budget using my phone, but they're free and they're there to help. There's 2 resources there which I really wanted to give you guys last time. One is Franz Schmel's International Course for Concert Harmonica. Franz Schmel, I'm sure many of you know him. He was just an amazing classical player, and super fantastic. Seemed like a really awesome guy as well. Unfortunately, he passed away, I think, just over a decade ago. But you can find him playing on YouTube. But there's a little document there where he gives his course to the harmonica, and I think it's something everybody should read. The other resource is Jimi Avesaw's Jazz Handbook, and I think, as I mentioned last time, Jimi really sort of set out the process for learning jazz standards, and we're going to look a little bit at that today as well. And then, yeah, last time I gave you this practice routine, and I was really sort of chuffed with the way it came across. And I gave you this routine of warming up the harmonica using a chromatic scale. And I sort of explained, for me, crossing over from the diatonic, the chromatic scale really helped me learn where all the notes are on the instrument and sort of formulate a pattern for learning the instrument. And I think that's really important for you guys. It's a fantastic way to physically warm up the instrument. Okay, it's nice if it's a hot day like this, but if the reeds are cold and it's been winter perhaps, then you need to bring the reeds up to warm temperature so that they perform properly. And I'm always trying to make boring things like the chromatic scale and stuff fun. So I sort of explained last time, well, you can do articulation, things like vibrato, tremolo, and all that stuff. Then I said, in your little practice routine for 5 minutes a day, look at something related to theory. We all don't like it. We all want to ignore the theory section and just get on with our lives. But again, I tried to make it fun for you guys. And I said, well, if you're a beginner or an intermediate, being able to play in every key on this instrument is fantastic. And you can set yourself an easy rate of learning 1 scale a week and learning the associated arpeggios. And you can do fun things with them by doing, little different scale patterns, playing them in thirds and triplets, jumping between notes, playing octaves. There's so much stuff you can do to make the boring stuff fun. And then I said, next in my practice routine, right, I've warmed up, I've gone over the theory hurdle, then I do my new repertoire. And these are the songs that I may have picked up for the first time, or I'm still learning, I'm still polishing them off. And I've sort of thrown you guys in the deep end with that today, because I've given you some songs. Some of you will have literally just clicked on them as you joined us, that's fine. Some of you might have been playing them all week, that's also fine. I'd be happy to hear your experiences with them. And then finally I said, at the end of my practice routine, last 10 minutes, whatever, play stuff that I know how to do it. That way you're always ending your routine on a high. And I started, before I properly started, I talked about musicians having mentalities. If every time you play, it's the difficult piece and you finish in the difficult piece and it's not there yet, you're just putting yourself down. It's important that you bring yourself back up and go, okay, I can't play Rachmaninoff's 5th concerto with strings. but I can still play Autumn Leaves, or I can still play Summertime, or something like that. And it's really good to have that mentality and that success when you're playing. So today I wanted to talk about that new repertoire, finding songs, making songs your own, playing about with them. And I also wanted to turn my sort of approach on its head, because instead of boring you with scales and routines, a lot of jazz guys just use the songs to learn things. There's a wonderful flip, which is just letting the music teach you that stuff instead of just reading the book and reading the theory book and, you know, perhaps dissuading yourself. So we're going to look at these 3 songs and we're going to break them down. Before I jump into the first one, we're going to look at the Swan first, which is a lovely, beautiful piece of classical music. Part of this process, I call it having songs on the go. And at any one point, you can talk to me, or probably most players, and they'll be like, you know, I got 5 or 6 songs on the go, and they're not there yet. They're going to take another month, another 2 months. There's one song that I'd love to play one day, but I really think it's going to take me more than a year to learn it. So when you build this sort of process of learning your songs and finding songs that you think, oh, that would sound great on the harmonica, I'd love to play that. Set yourself a time scale. Have that song, maybe it's a jazz standard where, yeah, I'm going to be able to play that in 2 or 3 days, no problem. Maybe you can play it in an afternoon. I'll debate that theory in a second, but that song, I love that song. It's probably going to take me a month to really do that, or what have you, particularly with classical music. A lot of it is just putting in the time and just playing it at a slow tempo. I made a terrible mistake in my last session in that people asked me, well, what are you doing? And I tried to show off by saying I'm doing the fast songs, right? I'm doing the Paganini. You know, it's very impressive to play fast, but it's also, you know, cheating music a little bit. I was talking to a saxophone player friend of mine today, and he said, Sam, when you play fast, the best you can really hope for out of the instrument is to play the right notes at the right time. Actually putting in articulation and feeling and a little bit of a groove, a little bit of style into your music, you need to take your time. And various music teachers of mine in the past have said there's only one reason we make mistakes. We're playing too fast. Either literally the tempo is too fast, or metaphorically, you're not quite ready because you haven't got a technique of, say, playing octaves down yet. So you need to go away and play octaves. So whatever it is, just slow it right down and say, okay, is the metronome too fast? And am I just racing in? Or, you know, look at the piece of music and say, this piece of music is talking to me. It's telling me that before I can play this, I need to know a certain scale, or I need to do X, Y, Z. And the reason I chose our first piece, the Swan, is because it's the perfect example of that. It's almost like a Chinese finger trap. The harder you pull on it, the tighter it gets. The faster you go on this song, the worse it sounds. The slower you play the Swan, the more gracefully you play it, the more beautiful it sounds. So last time I spoke about things like vibrato and tremolo. This is a lovely song to just try and do those things slowly. And before I begin, I'm already telling myself, Sam, just because you're on camera doesn't mean you have to show off and play fast. Take a deep breath and play slowly. What else would I like you to know? Yeah, just take your time with it. So. You know, imagine playing that at 180 beats per minute. You know, the audience would run out of the hall. So what I thought we could do first to just get you guys warmed up is I'd like you to just take a moment to, I'm going to give you about 3 or 4 minutes to just, first of all, compose yourself, play a chromatic scale to warm up the instrument. Or however you want to play it. And then the piece is in G major. I'm hoping you know what G major is. It's basically the same as C, but we throw in an F sharp. So then I'd like you to do that. And then if I share the screen, I don't want you to play the whole song. That would be silly. Why are you just showing me bluesette? Can we not? I want you to play the first 6 or 7 bars, not past bar 9, if you can see the music up in front of you. I'm sorry, I'm going to try and sort out why it's not sharing it properly. So yeah, just take 3 or 4 minutes and play that, and then I'm gonna have a chat about it, and by all means ask me some questions about it. But again, just the first 3 or 4 lines. I did say this is also a lesson for advanced diatonic players. One of the things I'm really falling in love with is playing a chromatic scale on the diatonic harmonica and trying to get it, but I'm still getting there with it, doing things like overblows and what have you. So yeah, that's my little thing. Warm up with your chromatic scale, play the G major scale, and then have a go at the Swan. And I'm going to fix this. Is it because I've got everything open? There we go. Finally, we're there, right? Play it around a couple of times. I'll give you another, say, 2 minutes to just have some fun with it. It's such a beautiful piece of music, it really is. One more minute. Okay, so thank you for taking the time to have a go with that. Like I said, just take it in little chunks like that, so you can see an obvious section that you could learn, you know, for 5-10 minutes there, get that under your belt. And there's another section, section 2, take 5-10 minutes, get that under your belt, and so on and so forth to learn the whole thing. And you know, by all means, take this away later and learn it, because it's a lovely piece. But to sort of continue with my point, though, in terms of what you can take away from this piece of music in terms of practice routines, I feel like David Attenborough now, because I'm always telling you about scales and arpeggios in theory and under the microscope, but here you sort of see them in the wild. There we've got G, F sharp, B. If we were to add a D in there and go down to G, that's just a G7 a G major 7 arpeggio. That's almost an E minor 7 arpeggio if we put a B and an E in there. So already in bar 1, you've got the relative major and the relative minor arpeggios, which you can then take time to learn. And if you've got them in your mind already, then you've already got a pattern to come to this song really quickly and really fresh. The next bar along, that lovely sort of long note on A. There you've got a perfect example of, you know, long notes. And you always listen to jazzers, particularly people like Miles Davis, that could just hold a note and get a really clear, consistent tone. So that's a perfect opportunity to look at your own playing and saying, am I getting a strong, consistent tone there? As I get to that, I'm going. Do you want to, you know, long notes are a perfect time to put in some vibrato. So and another lovely long note down there on the E. And again, I'm always badgering you guys, telling you you need to know your scales in every key. Well, this bit, which is probably the most, well, second most intimidating part, is all that is G major, but we're starting on E, or you could say F sharp going to F sharp. So it would either be E Aeolian to F sharp or F sharp Locrian, whichever way you want to look at it. But if you just know G major, all you need to tell yourself is, right, oh, that bit with lots of notes, that's just G major, and I'm just going up the scale, but I'm starting on F sharp instead of G. So already you've got me nagging you about learning your scales and your arpeggios, but you can see where they're just naturally falling within the piece. We have a little bit of a change there. We repeat ourselves, then if I was to play that on a guitar, I'd harmonize that with a diminished chord. Then we've got something a little bit more complicated here. I'm still racking my brain as to what this scale is, and if you know, by all means don't keep it to yourself. The way I think of that is B major, but keep D natural, and that's just my mnemonic thing of reading that piece of music. That's what I'll tell myself when I get to that difficult part. I'll go, oh yeah, it's B major, but keep D natural. So taking the time to actually not just see what's in front of you, but analyze what's going on behind of it. One, helps you learn the song. And now later on, you can go, all right, first thing I need to do is, well, I can learn my arpeggios. I can practice long notes and I can play my scales through. And if you're taking this through to other pieces of classical music, you know, by all means, build up a little repertoire of your favorite composer or your favorite pieces and sort of run these exercises through. What else did I want to talk about? Yeah, please do go away and learn that, because it's such a lovely, wonderful piece. And it teaches you this point of playing slowly and with a strong, consistent tone. Do I have any questions at this point? Anything somebody would like to know? Sorry, let me just find the comment box. There we go. You've all got that there, chat. One key of G is fine. Just
How's this? Hi.
Hi.
Hello. Whilst I was looking at it, I found it helpful to notate where to use, where I would find it easier to use hole 4 and hole 5 on the sharps, because whether it's up or down, and I think that might help when I learn it to make it a bit smoother.
Definitely, it's one of the tricks, and yeah, you're absolutely right. So I didn't see who said that, but yeah, it's one of the tricks. Whenever you've got a repeated note on, because you can obviously play C in 3 different places at certain points. You can play an F in different places. So for example, sometimes it's a bit easier for me to play an F major arpeggio without using the slide. It's easier to play an F minor 7 arpeggio using the slide. So learning those little tricks, yeah, you're spot on of which way do I navigate across the harmonica. Perfect. Great. Well, that was my sort of little opening gambit, and in terms of approaching classical pieces and pulling things from the piece, not just reading it at face value. And in last lesson, can we mute whoever's now sort of, there we go. Yeah. Last time I had a fantastic question. I think it was from some gentleman. I can't remember. It might have been Anthony. And if you're here, Anthony, say hi in the comments. I mentioned that a good place to get repertoire is things like the Real Book. And people said, well, what is the Real Book? And I explained that it was this sort of compilation of people that had transcribed jazz standards and were sharing it on the underground. They were using, you know, pre-photocopying stuff, so things like lithographs, and just sharing it and having a collection of this stuff was known as the Real Book. And you'd have, you know, all the greats, all your Duke Ellington songs in there. And this was circulated on the underground for decades in the 60s and 70s. And it was just taken as sort of standard that if you took yourself seriously as a jazz player, you would know most of the songs in the Real Book, either off by heart or you'd be able to read the chart very quickly. I'm just going to pull up those songs. So I mentioned Satin Doll in the the previous video, and a gentleman was saying, well, what key is Satin Doll in? And it's a really interesting question to answer, because jazz people are always interpreting things differently. They're always talking about playing the changes, and I gave a very, very quick explanation of what playing the changes means. So I thought we could have a little look at Satin Doll next. And again, just it's quite an easy piece. Don't rack your brain on it on this heat. You can already see I'm going red in this heat like a lobster. But let's pull that up. And again, we'll do this thing of let's just play the melody through, and then I'll hopefully explain this process of playing the changes and understanding what the composer was putting into the piece of music and what you can pull out for it in terms of practicing. Let me just dig that up. So yeah, if you do have Satin Doll already in front of you, it should have been on there. I do apologize. I had to use my phone to get a screenshot of it. Nowhere near me does scanning and photocopying. I find it quite romantic, actually, because all of this stuff was originally done illegally. People were illegally sharing this music and compiling it without the composer's knowledge. So here I am illegally sharing it with you from my poor phone imagery, and you can make of it what you will. There we go, Satin Doll. And if you've got it pulled up in front of you, because you've got the resources there, you'll see me that I've scribbled over absolutely everything, and that's a good thing. There we go. Perfect. I've got the hang of it now. Lovely. So don't worry about the ending. If you're more new to the chromatic, just take those first two lines. Apologies, like I said, my pencil marks everywhere. If you're a bit more advanced, play the whole thing through, and we'll talk about that. I'll give you another 2 or 3 minutes to have a go with that. And also, happy weekend, everybody, if I haven't said it already. Yeah, I think that's probably given you guys enough time to have a look at that. Again, if you're a diatonic player, this is great for getting your bends really precise, which is something I'm always working on. And yeah, it's a lovely little tune. Everybody always has fun with this one. But the point I sort of wanted to explain is that in jazz, when you hear people talking about the changes, they mean all sorts of things, and you've got to unpack what they're saying. So, for example, one thing you'll look for in the piece of music is what they call the key centers, and how the key center changes, and it often changes with or against the circle of fifths, which is something I explained in the previous lesson. So if you're not familiar with that, do track back and have a look at it. And last lesson, again, when I explained about the arpeggios, we saw that there's only, for example, one dominant 7 arpeggio for each key or that chord. And we tend to look for that chord to tell us to go back to the resolution, the key that you're in. It's what they call the dominant or the fifth, the dominant fifth or the dominant seventh in this case. And that in jazz, you often hear about 2-5-1 chord progressions. So we can see that there's no sharps or flats there, so we know we're in C. D minor is the second in C, so that's your 2. G7 is the fifth of C, so that's your 5. And then you would resolve to a 1 chord. But what Duke Ellington does in this piece is he keeps it going. So you've got 2-5, 2-5 in C. So you know you're in C major there. Then he goes up, and E minor is in C. So it's questionable. We could be in the same key, but we've got an A7. Again, that's demanding resolution. What key does A7 resolve against? D. And so on and so forth. So you can tell yourself already, right, first I'm in C, and I'm moving around to D if you're improvising. We're there for 2 bars. And then we've got another change. We've made the dominant 7 into a minor 7, and D7 goes against G. We flatten all that. So we're in F sharp briefly for 1 bar, and we're back openly to C major, and we're possibly going around again. We've got another change here. G minor 7, C7. C7 resolves back to F, so we know we're back in F major, and we're back to G. So I've got lots of blank faces now, haven't I? Taking the piece of music and reading the changes like that is probably one of the first steps you're going to do. First, you're going to jump right in and you go, Satin Doll, I love that song. And you're going to play the head, you're going to play the theme. And that's, what we all enjoy doing. But then when you come to actually improvising it and knowing how the music is moving, you've got to take a second to just go, okay, this particular reading of Satin Doll has got these chords, and it's telling me I'm going to C to D, then G for 1 bar, F sharp for 1 bar, and then back. This is where things get really annoying, particularly in jazz, that I find all the time, and they just say, this is why you've got to be super precise with it, is that I've seen about 3 other versions of Satin Doll using different chords around here. So they're phrasing it very differently. They're getting a different sort of sound from it. You can do things like chord substitutions, which I won't go into too much, but that's something you can look up. So you can reharmonize the piece, and you can do all sorts of crazy things with it. But I'm still, getting there when it comes to jazz improvisation. So I'd be quite comfortable, playing the head round like I did, and that's a lot of fun. When it comes to breaking it down further, you can, again, in terms of taking things you can practice from it, just play it slowly and say, right, well, can I play C, D, G, F sharp, F? Am I comfortable playing in those keys? Can I break down those arpeggios and play them one at a time? Or Adam Glasser, who's amazing at this stuff, and I recommend lessons with him as well. He's fantastic. He talks about, how you just play the arpeggios through. So does that Jimi Avesaw book, because that's almost the easiest way to play these changes confidently. When you're playing the arpeggio, you've got safe notes, and if you're just playing around it, you're doing what they call playing in the pocket. And by that, they mean that normally on beats 2 and 4 in jazz, you're referencing a note from the arpeggio during your solo, during your big improvisation. That way, you're always playing something safe, and you're keeping the groove together, and you're moving with the music. You're going with the changes. It's quite funny for me because I play in a blues and rock band. That's what I do. And I'm always talking to my guys, and they're always going, oh, Sam, you like jazz, right? I'm like, yes, I'm having a lovely affair with jazz. It's brilliant. And they go, they just make it up, don't they? They just play any old thing. They just play a chromatic scale and get it right. And I go, no, they play the changes. And they, what do you mean changes? Music doesn't change. It's been, they love winding me up, but it's taking the time to actually see, right, another change that you're playing is what I'm trying to describe, of playing each arpeggio and using that as the grounding of your solo. And that way you're always playing safe notes. I feel like I've just bombarded you guys with stuff. Any questions around that sort of stuff, or anything you want to ask me?
Well, Sam, I played Satin Doll for a number of years, and I must admit that I haven't worked an awful lot on the embellishment side of it, and it's quite interesting listening to you and putting some of the finer points on the piece of music. I don't know that I'm one of the older generation, but I just like playing the song basically.
Perfect.
All right, if I can sort of phrase it in a nice way, yeah, fair enough. And I've got some very nice tracks.
Yeah.
I got about 4 versions of Satin Doll. The latest one I've just downloaded, and if you've got time, I'd put it on and get your comments on it.
More than happy to, Michael. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, I think at the end, we're just going to blast through Bluesette, Toots, and then I'm more than happy to take some questions for 3 or 4 minutes. And then, yeah, by all means, feel free to play or say anything else. I got a lovely email from Anthony Craven, and there you are, Anthony. You mentioned that you did a recording of this, and he's not there by the looks of it. He's gone to the kitchen to get another drink. He mentioned I'd be happy to listen to your version. You mentioned that you did a version, so I'd love to listen to that at the end. But I hope that helps, and that you can say, look at this and go, oh, well, this is a cue to learn this scale and to see how I could use that scale against this. And last but not least, I thought we'd look at Bluesette by Toots Thielemans, because I always, whenever I think of Toots Thielemans, I think of the grandfather you wish you had when you were a kid, right? He's always smiling, he's got that lovely moustache, he plays so beautifully on everything. He's always such a happy chappy. And Bluesette is a lovely piece that, again, I can sort of chat to you guys about. Pull that up. Where are we? Bluesette. And again, don't go mad with it. Let's just look at the first 2 lines, as it were. Where have you guys gone? There you are. Let me just share my screen. I'll give you another few minutes to just... No, that's the Swan. To just... I know what it's doing. I understand what it's doing now. It's working against me. There we go. Come on, Toots. No, that's Satin Doll, so I have to do that. I understand. Right. Again, if you've got it in front of you already because you've downloaded it, by all means, jump in and get started with it. There we go. And just at this stage, if you're not familiar with this piece, then just focus maybe on the first 2 lines, and we can talk about that a little bit.
Hi Sam, could you just play it through a couple of times or once so we can get an idea?
Sure. Sorry, your chat is blocking that next note, excuse me. So from the E flat. You can embellish it like that. Let's just, honestly, all I really want to sort of talk about is this section here. So let's just focus on that. Again, slowly, don't rush it. Just those 2 lines. Then you've got your, what I would take away from this, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and I'll play through some exercises for you. That's it, it's 1,000 degrees.
I've got a question. If you can hear me, okay. What it is on the 1, 2, 3, 4th line, you've got an F flat, which is basically an E. The second note is an F flat. Why did they make it an F flat and just instead of making it an E natural?
Sorry.
That's the fourth line down.
Oh yeah, F flat, because you're in B flat.
It just seems very strange that they've made it an F flat rather than an E natural.
Probably because it's related to the arpeggio, I would say. Good point. I would say probably because normally they do things like that there, so they've sharpened, they've made it clear that you're going from a sharp to a natural.
Maybe there's no obvious reason. Maybe that's just the way they've done it.
Because it wouldn't be an E natural. That's why, because you're in B flat.
Yeah.
So you've got an E flat, so you'd be
that's
sharpening.
Right.
So you'd be writing E sharp instead of.
So F. you can't. Yeah, but to me, I'm just wondering why you can't just make a flat note natural instead of making the note above it flat.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's just it just was something that I wasn't sure about. But
the long-winded approach to that is basically what we'd be saying now is we've gone to D flat major. We've changed key, and now you're changing key again. Well, you will be changing key there.
Oh yeah. So well, let's see what chord it is. That's why it will be. It'll be in a D flat chord. You'll have F natural.
Get you to think in the flat rather than sharps. Also, jazz people are lazy. They prefer to think in flats than sharps because most instruments, as you probably know, most jazz instruments, things like saxophones and trumpets, are tuned to E flat and B flat. So that way around. And I wish, the guys that wrote the real book had thought, well, chromatic players do tend to think by sharps naturally because we've got the sharp. The great discipline is actually learning to think in flats to sort of approach this thing.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No problem, brother. Okay, so again, I'll leave you with this stuff because some of you may have never played this piece before and you're not just going to pick up something like that, and some of you are going to be confident you are going to pick it up like that. Again, if this were me looking at it, at least those first two lines, the first thing I'd take away is, it's almost like playing Scrabble or Sudoku or something like that. That first part there is just B flat major, but I'm starting on F and I'm only going up to E flat. So if you're familiar with B flat major, there you go. Perfect. And B flat major is a lovely scale to learn. I mentioned again in my previous little session for you guys that as you learn each scale, you will become familiar with little patterns that open up on the instrument. So the easy way to think of B flat that I always start on is I actually start on G below, 3 draw, and draw with the slide in. And then you're just repeating that pattern on hole 5. And then you've just got F in between. So that was G minor, which is the relative minor to B flat major. But developing just a little pattern of just going, and then repeating that pattern again, but this time starting on C. Having little things like that to yourself really sort of help you learn those scales quickly. So if you are more towards the beginner sort of side of things, hopefully things like that will help. It's also a bit of a difficult piece because, again, improvising jazz in 3/4, it's always a little bit funny. You've got to get that sort of swing feel to you, which is something I'm still really, really working hard on. What else did I want to tell you? Again, we can look at how the piece of music is changing. This is what, in the previous piece, the Saturn Doll piece, we spoke about a major 2-5-1. This little example here is a minor 2-5-1, briefly. And they're using that to key change. This is actually a very, very small part. They use a very similar progression in Autumn Leaves, except that they stay on G minor, so it would be G minor, not F. But there we've got our the key that we're in and the associated, you know, major 7 arpeggio. We're moving away from it and into a minor key, the relative minor, but then we're using that as the 2 chord, and I mentioned the 2-5-1, and C7 is 5th of 7. Sorry, is the 5th of F, and then here we've got a 2-5-1 into E flat major 7. We hold that for another bar. We've got another 2-5-1 into C sharp or D flat. So again, pulling that up, that's going to tell you what key you're in when you're improvising. And it moves quick. So when pieces of music move quick, the easy thing to do is just play slow, long, beautiful notes, which is what Toots is doing. The other thing that I found really, really sort of interesting about this piece is, or what you can sort of look for when you're developing your improv skills, and this is still something I'm really working hard on, is looking for target notes. And the notes that tend to give a chord its color are the 3rd and the 7th. And that's what Toots is doing here. So there he's gone to the 3rd of A flat, A minor 7 flat 5, excuse me. It's a hot day, is E flat, that's the 3rd, and that's G, the 7th. Now we're changing key. So he's making that very clear by highlighting the 3rd. And then again, changing key, going from, that would be a minor 7 if we were still in B flat, but we're not in B flat anymore. So he's highlighting that we've gone to C dominant 7 with an E natural. I hope that sort of makes sense for you guys. That's another sort of thing you can practice, is just as you're playing these arpeggios through, is focus on those notes. And that'll give you something else you can take away from things. And again, like the previous exercise, ask yourself, am I familiar with the arpeggios that are going on here? Am I familiar with the keys that are going on? E flat is a big jazz key, so is B flat, to be fair. So just taking the time to learn those scales. E flat is the My Funny Valentine scale, that's how I remember it. And what have you. B flat is Autumn Leaves, isn't it? And there you go. So those are just a few ideas that hopefully will give you some inspiration, so you don't just take the songs at face value, which is really fun. And that's step 1, is play the melody beautifully, right? Then when it comes to the interesting things like improvising or playing a rhythm just to back up somebody else who's improvising, being able to move with the changes and being able to look for the highlights that the song is telling you to look for, I think that's a really fantastic skill to have. That's all I've really got to say to you guys at the moment. Thank you as always for your attention. I appreciate it's a hot day, and perhaps my explanations are a bit convoluted, so please ask me questions to unpack them. The benefit of me doing these things now is I get a little 2 minutes of self-promotion. I did a lovely little album, there we go, dedicated to Scott Joplin. Back to my previous point about choosing a classical player and using them to build a repertoire. I did an album earlier this year dedicated to Scott Joplin. So please do go out there and listen to that. Musicians don't really get paid anymore. Spotify doesn't pay me, YouTube doesn't pay me, but that's okay. I'm happy doing this stuff as long as there are sort of listeners for it. My next album, which I'm hoping should be out in the next 2 to 6 weeks, as I said at the beginning, is a tribute to Jimi Hendrix, which is going to be very different and perhaps not what you came here for, but it'll be very rocky, lots of diatonic stuff, lots of chromatic stuff, and lots of me playing the guitar. When that comes out, please do support it, share it, tell your friends about it, download it. You'll be able to listen to it on YouTube, like it, subscribe to my channel on YouTube. There's free lessons on my channel. Everything I do is free. It's all about just getting it out there, sharing what you know, and seeing the instrument take off. And yeah, again, thank you for your support. Thank you again, Sam. Can't say thank you to you enough. And yeah, anything else I can help with.
Are there any questions at all?
Sam, have you done Little Wing in the 3rd position?
I've released that as a pre-release, and it's an early mix, but I've now done the final mix of it.
On the diatonic, yeah.
Little Wings on that.
Great, yeah.
I'll be sending it to you. Ooh, that was...
Sorry? Go ahead. I have a question about bluesette, for instance. Do you think that it's always done consciously in the sense of target notes? We see it when we're analysing it, or when you're analysing it,
sure.
that it's very obviously target notes here. But could it be that the musician in question, Toots, has just written a beautiful melody, then added the chords to it, and that's because the chords are appropriate, it appears almost as if they were targeted, if you like.
Yeah. Toots is Toots. He was still the coolest chromatic player ever. I know there's some big names out there. We can all spend hours telling you our favorite chromatic harmonica players. But Toots is just Toots. I think he's cool. And I think all players are exactly like that. Like you say, sometimes you do consciously, I sit there with a guitar and go, oh, if I did this chord, then surely I should do that chord. Sometimes I go, well, no, screw that rule. I'm going to do this chord over here. And that's the joy of music. Same when you're writing a melody, you just sort of, I can imagine Toots he's a whistler, isn't he? So you just go, you play that melody, just whistling it. And I think I'm doing this, the idea behind this lesson was to give you things to sort of pull out and sort of just practice and just maybe help you take a different angle at the song as to what you would otherwise sort of do. That's my sort of approach. But yeah, Toots, coolest guy in the world.
Sam,
go ahead.
Sam, I'm a real raw beginner on my CX12.
Sure.
I've only had it a couple of weeks, and I've noticed that holes 10, 11, and 12. I come from a diatonic. 10, 11, and 12 are quite different to play nicely and cleanly than the rest of the going back down to hole 1. Is that common?
Again, similar to a diatonic, sometimes when you go into the top octave, you've got to almost change your embouchure a little bit. So it might just mean you're really pinching your cheeks there, whether you're tongue blocking or
I'm puckering.
Yeah, it's going to be your cheeks, and breaking the reeds in, particularly in a CX12, that's a Hohner harp, so the brass reeds sometimes need just a bit longer to break in and get a tone from them.
Okay.
Just warm up the whole harmonica every time you play it with that little chromatic scale, and as you start to get to that top octave, be conscious about how your body moves, because everybody moves slightly differently. This is why I was telling you at the start, I was saying how when I warm up, I jump up and down to get my body heart rate accelerated, my lungs moving. People have different ideas on whether you keep your head still or move it, or whether you do this. It doesn't matter as long as you know and you analyze how your body interacts with it. So I'd say just try just pinching your cheeks in a little bit more. So you're also, what I find is you're directing a thinner stream of air through whatever embouchure I'm doing. The previous one was puckered, that was just lip pursed. Both occasions I'm closing the gap, just more and more, but don't force it.
Okay, thanks.
Nice.
Second question.
Yeah.
Second is, what harmonica are you playing yourself? Is this a Seidel, one of the stainless ones?
I'm very, very proud to endorse Seidel. I really like them as a company, as a business.
Which one is it?
I like all of them. I like stainless steel reed ones. I will show you. This is the one I really love. It's their cheapest stainless steel one. It's called the Deluxe Steel, and it's light as a feather, and you throw it in your gig bag. And like I said, I play with a rock band, so I'm throwing this, I'm dropping this on stage all the time. It still works.
Called the what? Steel?
The Deluxe Steel.
Deluxe,
yeah. Backwards, isn't it?
Yeah, other way out.
But they also do the Saxony and these lovely symphonies. This is what I'll record with when I'm lucky enough to be asked to record. I'll go for these guys, but these two are still just absolutely gorgeous. And
the lightest one is the Deluxe.
Yeah.
Because I've got a bit of arthritis in the thumb here, so I'll go for the light.
Really light. It's so quick and so responsive, this one.
Thank you.
Thanks
very much. Much appreciated, Sam.
Sam, question from me. Because I've just started doing a little bit of jazz. I've actually bought diatonic, but it's augmented tuning.
I saw your Facebook post. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, to be honest, it's like starting to play a totally different instrument.
Tell me about it.
Because it's being used to diatonic for so many years. You're thinking in not notes, but sort of scale degrees where you are up the scale. Whereas with this thing, it's more about the notes. So my question to you is, when if you play an arpeggio, what is going through your mind? Is it the shape of the arpeggio, or if you're doing a scale, is it the shape, or is it the actual notes themselves?
Bit of both, and that's a really, really good question. And I'm in the same boat as you. For years, same as this. What I do with my band every night is just blues on a diatonic. You know, the same old stuff that we all know. And then about December of last year, I finally tweaking these things to get the overblows. So I'm doing the different method to you, and just it's important that you have these moments so that you're constantly learning something new. And it's like snakes and ladders, you know, all of a sudden everybody's yelling my name to, I can't play this thing chromatically. It takes me ages. On the chromatic, I've got the notes memorized in my head now, better than I do on the guitar, actually. In terms of theory, the chromatic is sort of king for me. And that's why I'm struggling to do what I think you're trying to do, is to play chromatically on a diatonic that's specially tuned, because the chromatic is close but no cigar. It changes in the top octave, the middle octave, and the lower octave, the breathing patterns. So the middle octave is perfect because it is the same. Almost, actually, no, it's not, is it? Because the B flat's in a different place, the F sharps are blows, whereas on a chromatic they're draws. So it's hard for me to say, Sam, do this, because I'm paddling the same boat with you down the river. What I'm finding is this routine for me, which is just 5 minutes a day of, can I play the chromatic on this? Can I play a chromatic scale on this? And then calibrate my mind to it. Then doing one scale a week, and it's quite a nice symmetry, because that was also me about 5 or 6 years ago on the chromatic. But yeah, mental models are really important. So you both need to theoretically know where all the notes are in your mind, in your mind's eye, but then also have your sort of cheat sheet, like I mentioned with the F major and F minor arpeggios, just having that way of gliding across the instrument. And yeah, it's tough, but that's what it's about, right?
Well, what I've done is to get to know where the notes are is just to take, I think, got 5 or 6, you know, the standards, you know, summertime, autumn leaves, shadow of your smile, Besame Mucho, those sorts of things. So I'm starting to know. I mean, I can sort of read music. You know, over the years, I've had to go to do it properly. But what I'm finding now is I'm actually reading the music to play the notes rather than sort of knowing where the notes are, just without the music. Does that make sense?
Definitely. I mean, you want to hear how bad I am at it. I'm doing the same thing. Like I said, what I'm working on is getting the intonation on these overblows.
Yeah.
That's the hardest part. So you'll hear me play it flat. The Swan. See, I haven't even got it yet. Just that one little in there. I was doing a song. Sorry, I don't have it up, and I normally leave the sheet music. Which is by Dvorak. And then trying to play that on this. Like, excuse me, that's if I pick up one in the right key. You know, I think the chromatic sounds much nicer, but you're right, it's a fantastic exercise to do. And you listen to people like Howard Levy, And you know, guys, Mariano Masalo is the guy who does gypsy jazz on it, and they're fantastic. But it's important that you see this as well, because this is the iceberg effect, isn't it? You see them on stage or doing their little DVD, Howard Levy's, you know, Mastery of the Harmonica, and he has mastered it. But you don't see the hours every day of just working with a tuner, a guitar tuner. You can download that stuff on your phone for free, just a guitar tuner, to see, are you getting that note sharp or flat? Yeah. Doing that for 5 minutes, it's a lot of discipline. That resource I gave you by Franz Schmel on the resources sheet is just like, a classical player will play between about 5 and 8 hours, and that's what he did. I used to work for Yamaha Music in London. I was their guitar salesman, so you'd see me down the basement. But we had a lot of classical pianists come into the piano section, and they say, yeah, the classical pianist plays for a minimum of 6 hours a day, probably more realistically like 8 to 10. Now your lips are going to go on a harp player. You'll get they call it became a legitimate medical phenomenon because of Louis Armstrong, who also used to play for so long. His lips just started, you know, fracturing to pieces. So that, if you've done your 4 hours and you're super tough and your lips are made of steel, you know, well done to you. But what you can do in the other time, what they'll do, what a lot of guitar players do, because guitar players will get tendonitis if they do that, stuff like that, is they'll actually take the pieces and they'll do this. They'll say, what is my arpeggio there? How is the music changing? And they'll almost visualize those changes. And that's something you can do on the train to work. It's something you can do while your partner is reading a book or watching a horror film or what have you.
Or a chick flick.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. Like I say, it's sort of given me some great insight, and so I'm just still very, very early days. I mean, it's a really, really interesting tuning. I mean, basically, you've just got two draw bends on each hole. So each hole is 4 notes, but it's tuned like. So you can't think of it as a diatonic harmonica in the sense of I can just sort of do tongue blocking and vamp. It's just for the solo notes, which I say it's totally alien to me. So it's been quite a steep learning curve. I'm trying to do at least an hour a day, which is a challenge. But you know, it's. Hopefully after I don't know, by the time I'm 76 or something like that, I'll have mastered it, or at least one song.
What harmonica is that, Sam?
Sorry,
Wilton. What make of harmonica is it?
It's Seidel, but what they do is they do custom tuning. So if you know, I like the 1847s. I think they're the best harmonicas there are, personally. But they also, you can, like, you've got all the other, I suppose, more standard tunings like your harmonic minor, natural minor, the melody maker, those sorts of things. But they're on their list, in their custom shop.
Yeah, the augmented, that's the one you're using.
Yeah, augmented. But you could get them to do any tuning that you want, you know, which is you know, it's just literally clicking on each hole and what note you want on each hole. But it's
are you trying to play bebop on that, is it?
To be honest, it's something, you know, I've always had quite an interest in jazz, but never managed to get round to learning to play it. I did try it on the guitar about 15 years ago. I thought a chap called Joe Pass, Barney Kessel, those sorts of players. I thought, right, I'm going to become the next Joe Pass, and then realised probably have to spend 10 hours a day practicing, be high on something, I don't know, and so I still got the guitar, but I just didn't have the time to give to it, and it's similar to the way I played well, probably up to about 5 years ago. Bass was probably my first instrument, which is totally different to being in these sort of the backup part of the band. I was more used to that. So when I joined a blues band and was sort of at the front with the harmonica, that was a totally different experience. But say I did start. I thought about doing what Sam's doing and do it on the with a normal diatonic tuning with getting the overblows. But I think the thing that the struggle that I had is that with normal diatonic harmonicas, you think of positions.
Yeah.
And I think I had a good chat with Marcin Dajcek, who was here a few weeks ago, and he was saying, look, when you got one of these things, you don't think positions, and I think that is the sort of the key thing to start with, and I think in a way that's why I needed to get away from a normal diatonic, because if it was starting on, what would that be? I'd say C harmonic. If it was E flat, then you'd be on a overblow 4. As your first note of that chord, and you're thinking that's not my favorite note to start on, So and again, it's just something different, just playing around with something different, I'll always go back to the diatonic. I mean, it's like the as you say, Sam, it's like a nice comfy pair of slippers, isn't it?
Thanks, Sam.
No problem, guys. Anything else, or does anybody want to play something? Or my email is in the website, or you can contact me. As I said, Anthony, sorry, you sent me an email. I tried to email you back, but I got mailer demon, and if you do email me, I'm happy to talk, whatever. But just make sure you include your email in it, so that I can definitely send you something back. Yeah, everything is on my website or on YouTube. You're more than happy to just have a chat about this stuff and help you out.
Sorry, I just noticed there was a note earlier from Jim, aka Walter. I don't understand about target notes. Now, is that notes of the chord that you're playing?
Yeah.
Safe.
So when you're in that bar, that measure, if you're playing over pick a chord, so you're playing C major 7. The notes in a C major 7 that really give it its tonality are the 3rd and the 7th. So jazz players in particular tend to lean towards those notes and target them at least once.
Does that then gives you that? Sorry, it's getting a bit technical. Does that then give you that flat 5 substitution? Does it? So
that's tritone substitution, I think.
Oh, right.
Don't ask me about them. They scare me. Like I said, I only do 5 minutes theory. I'm getting to those. This is a perfect example. Like, I can learn my scales and my arpeggios, and I can look at a piece of music and go, that's 2-5-1 to that, and now I'm in that key. Oh yeah, he's implying a harmonic minor there. And then there's always the next thing that's your next little iceberg.
Yeah.
Right. And several times I've brought up YouTube clips of clever people, much smarter people that had a formal education and what have you, and they go, tritone substitutions. I just fall asleep.
Yeah.
My understanding of it says that if you're in C, so satin do, so my theory, and I might be completely wrong and embarrassing myself, is that I'm not going to pull it up again, but the last bit where it goes to F sharp for 1 bar, F sharp would be the tritone of C, because it's a tritone. It's the flat 5, like you said.
Yeah.
But then I think it's also related to altered scales and what have you, whole tone scales, whole tone, half tone scales that you can use over a tritone substitution, because that part of satin do is all in flats. So B flat and A flat aren't in C.
So I thought
I got nothing for you now. So
I've got one last question for you then. You say you learn your scales. Now, do you just learn literally the major scale, or do you then go into the different modes, like Dorian and... Yeah,
we did that last time. That was the thing. So the easy way is from my guitar player brain, is that you're playing the same scale but just at a different place. But on the harmonica, it sounds much nicer when you do play your modes through, and you just tell yourself that. And last time we said this, and it's a good idea to go to the 9th and back, so you can get a flowing thing. if I take C major.
Yeah.
And that way you can get flowing. You can just, while the adverts are on, you can do that. That's 5 minutes of theory while the adverts are on. And go all the way through, do it through different keys. And what have you. I tend not to worry so much about pentatonic. So what people like Adam Glasser have told me, and I had a guitar teacher for like a group guitar when I was like, trying, still like yourself, trying to learn jazz guitar. He knew Joe Pass and various other people. Kenny Burrell he knew as well. He was a fantastic player. All the jazz guys put their emphasis on the arpeggios, and when my rock band say it's all about, you know, just making it up if you're playing jazz, I'm like, no, it's because most rock people tend to think in the scale, the pentatonic scale, the rock scale. Was the jazz guys, they're going, whoa, I'm just going to read the arpeggios through and improvise around them. Almost what I naturally hear and what I naturally know the scale, the key center is telling me for that little center, for that little section. And that's how they sort of move so quickly, is that they can just look at this and go boom, 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 boom.
It's sort of very interesting because I one of my wife's friends is in a jazz band, and they asked me to play every now and then, and it was Fly Me to the Moon. So I think it was in A minor. So I thought, okay, I'll play that, and I'll play that in third position on a G harp, you know, and avoiding the draw 7. And they were saying afterwards, God, you didn't need to read the chord sheets, the music, but because I knew the chords in my head, you know, because it's quite common.
A lovely song. Yeah.
But the chord sequence is quite common, and it's sort of, there's not that many accidentals within the scales. But now I get now more of why they're there, looking at the chords for their sort of improvisation. You know, and it's just those little things that sort of click into place every now and then, you know.
It's interesting the perspective as well, because like the rock band, I'll say, will go, why are you looking at a piece of paper? That's terrible as a band, performance-wise, to just be stood there. If you see us live, we run around like lunatics. I'll normally do at least at one point, I'll jump up into the audience and start dancing, you know. You can't do that with a piece of music and they're going, oh shit, I'm in E flat now, back to F, and, you know, it's a very different performance mentality, but also, you know, very different approach.
Would you like me to play this backing track now, Sam?
Hit me.
Yeah, it's a professionally recorded backing track for jazz players. So it goes on about 5 minutes, but I won't play it, you know, time is an essence.
Yeah.
I won't play the whole lot, but you'll get the idea of it.
I was going to say, Sam, you were looking very Blofeld there with your stroking your cat on there.
Come, play me the chromatic harmonica or else.
Almost like, sorry, go on.
That was a bit of a negative stereotype doing the German accent. I do apologize. That was very insensitive. Voted remain. While we're waiting, that's another good thing I can show you is if you use things like, I'll try sharing my screen again. Will it do it? Okay, well, there's things like iReal Pro. Have people heard of iReal Pro?
Just got that.
They're really great stuff. It's about $20, but it's just the chords. It's just the accompaniment. So if you've got something like the Real Book or something, you've got the head there that shows you the chords, and then iReal Pro is this app that you can get on your phone or your computer that will play the chords through with a little drummer. And you can do so much with it. You can turn the chords off and just have bass and drums, which is what I want to sort of do next, maybe in about 6 months' time when I'm a bit more confident with this stuff. Just have bass and drums, and then just me improvising on top and playing the guitar with myself, and make some fun videos for you guys, and just enjoy it. Really good app.
I've got another question.
Here goes Sam.
Okay, go on, Michael.
Oh, go on. think struggling with the Zoom settings.
You get the idea, Sam?
Yeah, it's lovely. I love your moving rhythms. Wow, really nice. I have to apologize at this stage as well, because I've just looked through some of the comments, and there's somebody called Harold Shipman, and he's been making all sorts of derogatory comments. That is my bass player, Adam, and he snuck into the last one and started making snide remarks, and he's been in this one again making snide remarks. So he likes to take the mick out of me, and we do that. You know, you can't put four men in a room with musical instruments and not have them take the mick out of each other. And as soon as I get something like this, where I've got a bit more of an ego, boom, he's right there in the comments bringing me back down again. We have a rule in our band that there are no egos. You will have to be nice. But yeah, if anybody gets slightly ahead of the others.
I sort of suspected that when I saw his name, you know, and some of the comments. I thought, all right, I'll let Sam deal with that.
Well, that's why I've written "Get Out, Adam," because his name is Adam Ray. And you know what? There are so many stories I could tell you about that man and where he's screwed up, but I will be a class act. Any final questions, or anybody else want to play something or ask anything? Like I said, go ahead and email me. I'm always happy to have a chat. Walter, thank you for telling me about Jimi in Manchester. Yeah, don't do drugs. My ex-drummer took every drug out there. We kicked him out. I've been very much against drugs all my life. I enjoy, there's a Madeiran rule. Most of my family is English, but my grandfather was Portuguese, and we have a saying that 1 glass of wine a day makes you live forever, 2 glasses puts you in the grave. So that's knowing how to be sensible. Why am I talking about this, Sam? Sam, get me out. Why am I talking about this?
I'll ask you one more question. There you go. Do you learn this? Do you learn those songs in different keys, or do you just stick to the one key?
This is a really important thing, and what I'm trying to do is to take phrases and move them in different keys.
Okay.
Now, but you'll also see things like, so you play "Fly Me in the Moon" in A flat. I have an E flat. a lot of jazz writers, I know 3 versions of Autumn Leaves, one in G minor, one in E minor, and I want to say the other ones in, I want to say D flat minor. So
F flat.
Sorry, D flat, I thought I said, sorry. C sharp. So yeah, to an extent they'll do it themselves because they'll all know the different versions, and it's a great thing. I know a guy who does the jazz channel on the saxophone show on Jazz FM, and he's like one of the top sax players in the UK. And I've had a few lessons with him just talking about jazz, and I tried to show off to him, so I learned a few Charlie Parker things. And I was like, all right, watch this. I've already messed it up. And he was like, why are you playing that so fast, Sam? Nobody plays it like that fast. You're not Charlie Parker, play it slowly. Then I can play it. And he was like, yeah, take little phrases like that and just move them into every key. So that piece, for example, starts on D and it goes to G. So then you can take that as you're in G major, so D is the 5th, and you're going through the minor 3rd. So you just apply that to another arpeggio, and then you can sort of fill in the gaps from there. I need the music up to play it properly, as you can probably tell by how awful that was. But yeah, I did on my free chromatic lessons on YouTube, which, again, done with a super Hollywood budget, not just my rubbish Samsung Huawei camera phone, whatever. I did Summertime and played that through in every key, because that's a really lovely song to play. Diatonic players normally play it in D minor, because it's 3rd position on a C harp. But then you can play that in A, because you're starting on the 5th and you're going down to the 5th. G minor. And what have you. Pick a key, any key. You're just, because again, you're thinking Summertime is built over a minor arpeggio. Here it is on a C harmonica. You can play it in an A minor there. What's the minor? E minor. No, I played that wrong. B.
5th position, is it?
And what have you. You're just using the arpeggio as a basis to learn it.
Yeah.
You're just filling in the gaps. Yeah, I need to do much more of that. Transcribing solos by ear is the other thing. It's taking little chunks of, if you like, that little run that somebody does, then noting that down, perhaps by ear if you're better than me, and then just moving it through. Some of the more common keys is what my friend told me to do. Because you do all 12, you're there for an hour, and you start doing this by the end of it. And you're like, can I go home now? But just the major jazz keys, F, B flat. Like I said, jazz is always thinking flats, not sharps, which I think is a big thing for chromatic players to get into the head, because chromatic players instantly see sharps as a good thing, sharpening it. But actually, flats are probably easier and more fun to play. They give you more slide movements. So like, that stuff is much easier as a flat key. If I played that in A, it's a nightmare. A and sort of B are the nightmare keys for a C chromatic, but the rest are even scary ones. So everybody thinks when they look at a piece of music, like a guitar player or probably more a violinist wouldn't like looking at F sharp, or a pianist certainly wouldn't, because that's the one with the most sharps and flats. But it's back to having these mental models, because for me, F sharp is sliding on everything except B, keep beat natural. So it's, there's F sharp, easy, because I've got that little model. So again, it's getting over these fears. What intimidates another instrument is actually a little bit easier for you, and don't back down from it, step up to it. I think Claire de Lune is in that key or a key close to it. And what have you. It's a really, really nice piece of music. Just take your time, go slowly. That's the lesson I'm always telling myself. probably like you, I'm a guitar player. So guitar players are always like, oh, we got to show off. We got to play as many notes per second. That's what a solo is.
My first band was a metal band, very loud metal band. I was the vocalist, so but yeah, I got more hair than them now though. They've lost some hair, so. That's brilliant. I suppose that's the way I think of jazz. Is it's a journey with no destination, really, isn't it?
Definitely.
Quick question, Sam.
Yeah.
Just one thing I've been wondering. Obviously, if you're playing jazz, you tend to be playing with a lot of horn players.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, like a brass band, they're playing, so they're transposing, so they're playing B flat as C. Yeah. So would you, as a playing the harp as a in normal key, as it were, would you pick up a B flat harp, a chromatic, and use that instead of a C one and read it as if you were reading C?
If you were really clever, yeah, Trevor. Yeah.
Wouldn't it? Because surely it'd be notated in C, so you just play it, pick up a B flat harp, and no.
Yes, you could do that. It would hurt my brain. Kind of like, you know how guitars have alternate tunings, like
Yeah.
I can't do that. I know where everything is the way I know it.
But it's
The different
it's
tunings.
not though. It's exactly a chromatic, a B flat chromatic, is exactly the same as a C chromatic, only it's tuned
Starts on B flat and then
toned down. Yeah.
Still too much for me.
Yeah. All right.
I really am a simple man. No, you're right. You're spot on right.
Yeah.
You could read a horn section piece.
Read it as C. Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah. So you could. If
I was but you don't do that though. I was just wondering if that was a.
I read for C instruments, so you could, if you had a, when they print the real book, for example, they'll print it for C instruments, B flat instruments.
Oh right.
E flat instruments. So if I had a copy of the real book and it was for E flat instruments, then yeah, I could run and get a chromatic in E flat.
Yeah. Yeah.
C on the book would be E flat that I'm playing, same as a trumpet.
Yeah.
Because trumpets are in E flat. So yeah, you could do that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's partly it's up to you, so you could do that. It's also partly up to, if you're probably playing with a band, the arranger as well. Because you're right, he might actually want you to have a lower, if you've got one of these sidle tune things that can go a lower E flat, which would be quite low, or it could be an upper E flat. So he might want you higher to pierce through at the right frequency, for example, in that key. He might want you lower. So he might direct you to say, actually, no, I don't want you playing on a C chromatic. I want you reading E flat, but playing an E flat harp as well. Or he could just say, no, I've notated it. Sam, the chromatic starts as a C instrument. I've written it for C there, you start there. But then you've also got people like, again, other people that give me headaches and keep me wide-eyed at night. People like Brendan Power, all the Irish tunings, because Irish, again, goes by only about 3 or 4 specific common keys. So he'll change chromatic for that, and it's like I said, I'm a simple man. I can play in one tuning on the guitar. I can play in one tuning on the guitar. But you are absolutely spot on. You're right, and I'm catching up.
I'm nowhere near.
You can play in lots of different tuned chromatics, because I spoke to Brendan Power.
Yeah.
If you're not reading, the minute you start to read, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Okay, should we let you go now then, Sam?
Yeah, it's all good. Thanks again, guys. Like I always say, just email me.